Hey there folks, Dr. Grimes here, and this video is being recorded in an effort to give you a little bit more information about the issue paper that you are working on right now as part of your class. I'll remind you that you have just recently finished your professional paper. The point of that, for those of you who like to understand the why behind the assignments, was to get you familiar with an HR person for two primary reasons. Number one, because you obviously have to be able to take the issues that we talk about in this class and apply them to the real world, and it's a lot easier to do when you're talking to an HR professional about that. But number two, because it gives you a connection to a real HR person so that when you have issues or questions or need guidance in the future, you've got somebody that you've already got a relationship with that you can go and talk to. So it fulfills two purposes from my perspective, to have that assignment on the professional person who's in human resources. The last piece of that particular paper that you did, the professional paper, was identifying a couple of issues that the HR people at your organization are looking at right now. And I challenged you at the time to explore with him or her some issues that they're thinking about, but they really haven't done a whole lot on yet. Because I don't want you in the issue paper to give me a report of what they've done so far. I want you to think about what they could do in the future to address this issue. And keep in mind also that the issue that you came up with in that paper may be a really large issue that is going to take a whole lot of different things to solve. And all I'm asking you to do here is to think about one particular thing that could help in the process. And it may very well be that this one thing is one of 40, but we got to start somewhere. So let's talk a little bit about the issue paper and what that needs to look like. Again, it is designed to be about 3 pages, and that was not a problem for most of you in the professional paper. Some of you went on to page 4, and a couple of you even went on to page 5 because you had so much good stuff to talk about. Keep in mind that I've got to read a bunch of these things, and the desire that you have to get feedback quickly is going to be met from my perspective by having fewer pages overall to read. I'm not looking for a really detailed synopsis of what you do here. I just want to get a feel for the idea that you can identify a problem, you can research the problem, and you can come up with a solution. And you can do that, generally speaking, in about 3 pages. So let me pull up a copy of the instructions here. And you notice that there's 3 pieces to it, just like there were like 4 pieces maybe to the last part. I want you to start with no header information, just like on my paper here. There's nothing up here in the header. There's nothing that gives you the opportunity to put my name and your name and the date and the course and the assignment name and take up like 6 or 7 different lines here. I just want at the very beginning of it to have the word issue, where you have a quick paragraph that picks one of the issues that you defined in your professional paper. If you only found one issue, that's fine, let's go with that. But if you said that there's 3 or 4 different things that they're starting to think about, pick one of them and just kind of remind me what that was. What's the issue? Why is it an issue? What's going on in their organization that causes them to feel like this is something we need to address right now? And I'm looking at perhaps a good solid paragraph or so that maybe takes up, from here on your paper down to here on your paper. So not a very large part of the paper overall. And actually, what I had meant to do, screen and camera, it should be. Yeah, well, hey, this is something I need to think about there. That makes it easier for you to see what I'm talking about when I share the thing correctly. All right, so again, the first section starts with the word issue, and then it has a good paragraph here that probably takes up about this much. This may even be about half the page, so it doesn't take long to remind me what your issue is. Where you're really going to want to spend a lot of your time is, let's see if we can get this view a little bit larger on the page, and I never remember which one of these things. There you go, page width. It makes it a little bit easier to see here. In the second part, I want you to review 7 articles. Now, in the instructions here, it says 7 SHRM articles, but I understand that your issue may be relatively new enough to where there's not a lot written about it in SHRM. So let's say, for the purposes of grading, that the agreement that I'm going to have with you is that you for full credit you do have 7 articles, but let's say that you might have either 1 or 2 that are not SHRM, so a Forbes article or like a Newsweek or some kind of article. Preferably it's some sort of a journal type of a thing rather than a newspaper or a magazine or something. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt if you have 2 articles that are not from SHRM, but I'd like to have at least 5 that are. And in this particular section of the paper, after you've done your issue, you want to have a heading that says SHRM Resources, and then you just want to start talking about what you have learned from reading those articles. And this takes up maybe half or 2/3 perhaps of page 1 and all of page 2 and maybe about half of page 3 perhaps. So you've got a good 2 pages to work with. That means that you don't have to, and you really can't, write a whole lot about any one of the articles in particular. But as you're talking about a particular article, I'm not worried about APA format. I'm not worried about the scholarly writing kind of thing. You're writing about an article, and maybe at the beginning of it or at the very end of it, you want to say, okay, this is article number 1. And then on your reference page, which is page 4, you'll just put a 1 in parentheses, and you'll give me the information about that article, the author, the date, the title, the URL link, whatever the case may be. All right, so we're looking for 7 articles for full credit. If you only want to do 5 articles, that's fine, but you'll lose a couple of points on the grading for the thing because you don't have 7. Write about those articles. You really don't want to quote anything. Take 5 or 6 words in quote. You want to summarize as much as you can, and it's not that hard to read through an article and say, basically what this guy is talking about is this, and here's a recommendation that he makes, or here's a trend that he sees is kind of important, and you should be able to put that into your own words for the most part. So 7 articles, at least 5 of which are SHRM and 2 of which can be outside SHRM in order to get the full credit. So midway through the 3rd page, now you're going to have a heading that says Proposal Summary. And you might be going into this in section 1 with an idea of what you want to propose, and you're just looking at SHRM to kind of build some evidence for why this is the right answer. Or it could be that you have an issue and you research because you don't know where to go yet, and it's in the process of doing the research that you kind of come to a conclusion that this is the best response. So in either case, in section 3, you're going to say, think with the basically, maybe not these words, but basically the idea is, with the research that I've done on this topic through SHRM and other outside sources, I'm kind of feeling like this is the best way to go to start to address the problem. And that would be, in a sentence, that we try to do blah, blah, blah. And I want to encourage you not to offer me 2 or 3 or 4 different solutions, even if you think those 4 solutions will solve the problem. I want you to focus on one of them, and then give me the rest of page 3 to kind of talk about what that looks like or what you might begin to do it. So maybe if the issue is related to employee morale, maybe the solution that you're going to propose here is that we do a survey to find out what they want. And so all you'd have to say is that I believe that one of the best ways to start addressing this problem is through the creation and implementation and deployment of an employee satisfaction survey. And then in just a couple of sentences, kind of talk to me about whether you think that that's on paper or that's online and the kinds of questions you might ask, but not a lot of detail. I'm not interested at this point in who's going to do it or how much it's going to cost or anything like that. Just a very quick summary. If there were a 3rd part of this particular project, you would really spend a lot of time thinking about the costs and all of those kinds of things. But right now, it's enough to just identify that this is one thing that I think that I would propose that you do if I'm the consultant. All right, we're going to look at the grading rubric here in just a second, but last ideas here are that I'm really concerned on this, or I'm wanting on this, to have pretty standardized formatting, as is the case with a lot of things that I do. Calibri is important to me. 11-point size makes it easier to read. 1.5 spacing, you want to make sure that you have all 3 of those headings: issue, SHRM resources, and proposal summary. And that you have the 4th page that has your reference information. Now, if you don't know how to do The spacing on this thing, or the font and all that kind of stuff, all you really want to do is to start typing. You don't even have to type the whole paper, but start typing. You come up here if you want to select Calibri. You can come here if you want to set it to 11. If you want to do the spacing at 1.5 times, you click on, at least if you have this version of Word, you click on this little icon and you click 1.5. I would also encourage you that you go to line spacing options and you make sure that it's set to 0 there. So that will space it. Then you can come in here and put a little indent or whatever you want to. But those things are important to me. Calibri, 11 point, 1.5 spacing, all of the headlines or section headings, issue and whatnot, and the length of the paper is important. So let us change our files here now and go to our rubric and get an idea of what we're looking for there. The issue, it doesn't take up much of your paper, and it's not really what I'm looking for. So the best you'll do is 5 out of 5. It's only worth 5 points. You notice that what is critically important is how well you identify articles and summarize what you've learned from those articles. So 50 points, half of the overall value, is how well you do your literature review, your SHRM and your outside sources. And I would think most of you will probably do pretty well summarizing those ideas and can expect to get 45, maybe even perfect if there's no errors whatsoever, if you give me reasonable detail about all of them. The proposal, which is section 3, 10 points. And again, you don't have to really do a whole lot in terms of building out or justifying that, but at least give me an idea of what that looks like beyond just the title that you would give to this thing. Here's where we have a little bit of variation from what's published in the rubric. 7 articles for full credit, but only 5 of them have to be SHRM. If you give me 5 SHRM and 2 other things, I'll give you the 7 points for this. If you give me 5 SHRM and 1 other thing, or you give me 4 SHRM or whatever, you don't get the full credit here. In terms of format and directions, here again, we're looking for the headings, we're looking for the spacing at 1.5, we're looking at the Calibri font, the 11-point size, and we're looking for a separate and distinct reference page. Grammar and spelling, I'm actually going to make little notes on a piece of paper as I'm reading through your paper, and if I see misspelled words, if I feel like you have done a poor job with the wording on a particular sentence, then I'll make a notch, and you're going to get points, or more specifically, you're going to lose points the more errors that you have in your writing. So make sure that you look over it a second time, you proofread it, maybe you print it out and get somebody that you respect, knows a lot about grammar and spelling, to read it for you and point out things. Maybe even contact our University Writing Center. You can find them through the GSW website and get them to look over it. And then you're going to submit it as an attachment to your Dropbox in Georgia View, and it's going to be run through Turnitin.com, which is going to bring back an originality score. And that's a little bit misnamed. It's a plagiarism score, so the lower the number, the better. The more you quote directly from a source, the higher that thing is going to be, especially if you don't quote it and cite it and whatnot. So 5 or less is a perfect paper in my opinion. 6 to 10, you lose a little bit. 11 to 15, you lose a little bit more. And if you get more than 15% of your paper that is directly taken from other sources, you lose 10 points, which is a whole letter grade. Well, I hope that kind of makes sense. Let's go back to camera view only, and you can finish this video by looking at my wonderful little face here. If you have questions, give me a holler, but the short version of this is that I really want you to focus on one of the issues, be open-minded as you go into it, identify what it is that's a problem, do a lot of research on what people are saying about this problem. Some of those articles may be about how this problem is developing, why it's a problem. Some of those articles may be about some things that folks suggest that you do to solve those problems. The third part, very short, is to give me one specific idea of something that you could do that would begin to start to address the problem. And again, remember, it may be that your particular idea may not resolve the problem, but it will help to move towards that point. And if you get all the formatting and stuff right, there should be no reason why you shouldn't get a real good grade on this paper, and learn an awful lot in the process about how an HR person would go about figuring out the right way to start solving some of the problems that they deal with. I guess that's all for now. If you have questions, shoot me an email or post to the Ask Dr. Grimes discussion board. And otherwise, I think that you probably will find that this paper is, while it may seem to be a little bit tedious doing the research, that you're actually learning how to think like an HR person and go through the process that they would go through to solve problems. And it'll give you a little bit more respect for what they do. That's all for now. Talk to you again soon.